Why should I know about it? Why should I know about it? Is it relevant to me, not relevant to me? So that also becomes very important because we don't want to learn so many things which don't relate to us. The third thing which is very important, then how? How do we go about it? If at all I have to be a part of it, how do I go about it? If I have to contribute to it, how do I go about it? Having said this, I would add another flavor to it by maintaining that when we talk about the budget, there are different perspectives. Why? Because somebody who is a researcher might be interested in the budget, like people sitting in the Reserve Bank of India doing the analysis of the budget. Somebody may be a researcher doing a Ph.D. program, also wants to know about the budget. Somebody may be a student, so just wants to know about the budget. Somebody is into policy making, wants to know some new things about the budget. And somebody, above all, is a common man who is not qualifying any of the criteria listed earlier, also wants to know about the budget. Then, what is my common denominator for everybody? So the common denominator is what, why, and how. Some people are satisfied with the what part of it, they want to know the why and how part of it. Some want to know what and why, they still don't want to know how. And some would want a complete platter. I want to know why, what it is, why it is so, and how it is prepared, or something like that. Right? So this is the background, this is the perspective in which I am going to talk to you about the budget. So we'll take up these three parts one by one. First, we'll take up what. Second, we'll take up why. And third, we take up how. Next slide. Next. Yeah. Indian budget, what? In the first place. So yes, the official position, if we maintain, like how the government of India would like to say what the budget is. So it is essentially an annual financial statement placed on the table of the Indian Parliament or state assemblies, that is the budget. Budget is a loose term. In fact, it is annual financial statement. It talks to you about the finances of the government, and governments who are the custodian of the public money, how they are planning, how they are proposing to spend that money, and how they are raising that money. So this is a statement throwing light on how we are raising, how we are spending, and we make a statement out of that. So that statement is the budget in India. As we all know, it is presented annually. So this is also prefixed as annual financial statement of the government, and it is placed on the Indian Parliament or the state assembly. Next. Yeah. In the second place, let me also share with you that the budget, and on the right hand side, you can see the cartoon image of the famous cartoonist R.K. Lakshman, and this is the common man. I have always been interested in making a subject as simple as it reaches the common man. So if there's a common man and I have to be talking to him in whatever language the person understands about the budget, then the why part becomes important for this common man, that why somebody is going to tell me about the budget. I am not interested. So the job becomes difficult and at the same time challenging. It is the assurance, the budget is in the form of an assurance given to the people of the country about their aspirations. Like aspirations means somebody wants to get a job, somebody wants to study in some foreign land, somebody wants to marry his son, somebody wants to buy a new house, somebody wants to set up a plant of chemical fertilizers, so on and so forth. So therefore, how the government is going to help them with this instrument, because the only instrument which is available with the government is this budget. Without budget or outside the budget, the government cannot spend a single rupee. So yes, how is it going to meet the aspirations of the people? So budget is also about meeting the aspirations and containing their aspirations. Next please. Yeah. The two more sub-bullets which you see here, for meeting this aspiration of the people, what are the requisite strengths with the government? Do they have enough money? or they don't have money. How that is then what is the approach to budgeting? Are you going to run the budget through all borrowed money? Are you going to raise the taxes? Are you going to cut down on the expenses? How are you going to in fact do it? So therefore, approach to meeting the aspirations is as much important as is the intention to meet the aspirations of the people. So that is where I make it a composite understanding. That is how I make it a composite understanding, saying that this annual financial statement, what we prefer to call budget in a shorter way, is all about the finances, that is the arithmetic of it. Besides, it is about the politics of it, how it is going to meet the aspirations of the people. And when I say politics of it, the two words in the brackets given below, the manifestos of the government and common minimum program. When there is a single party government, there is a manifesto, and the government says if we come to power, like these days you might be hearing about the Delhi chief minister making lots of statements, the other party is making lots of statements. If we come to the power, then we will do this. This is the manifesto. So afterwards, when they come to the power and they are reminded of their commitments or the promises, how are they going to do it? So they have to bring it to the budget. And then the budget should have sufficient resources. So that is how it will go. Common minimum program, when I say it is something like today we say the government of India, which is NDA, Democratic Alliance. It is basically a coalition. So whenever there is a coalition, there is a common minimum program of different ideological subgroups which form the government. So whether it is a common minimum program or it is a manifesto, finally it tells if the government comes to the power, then how are they going to meet the aspirations of the people? So when they come to the power, they make finances available for meeting out these aspirations, and they structure it in a format, and that format becomes the annual statement, annual financial statement, and that is what we call budget. So this is what of the budget. What is budget? This is budget. Next slide, please. Why? This is again, why should you know about the budget? Let the government do it. I have nothing to do with the government. I have no intentions to join any political party. I'm not going to contest the elections. So why should I know about it? That's a very common way of, reasoning. Why should I? So why should anybody know about the budget? Is because the budgetary estimates which are prepared in the form of raising the money or spending the money, they affect the life of all people. Whether they are taxpayers, their life is also going to be impacted. They are non-taxpayers, their life is also going to be impacted. They are free citizens moving in the society, their lives are also going to be impacted. They are the jail inmates. They've been convicted, they are behind the bars. Their lives are also going to be impacted because if the jail budget is reduced, the food quality becomes poor. So it was, I remember during the time of Mrs. Kiran Bedi, the first lady IPS officer, that Tihar jail reforms were introduced. That the jail inmates, they have done some crime good, the courts have awarded them punishment. Okay, fair enough. But while they are inside, behind the bars, their life should not be miserable. So jail reforms started. Jail budgets were then revised and enhanced. So look to this. A person who is inside the jail, not knowing what is happening outside the jail, his or her or his life is also going to be impacted. Therefore, it is of interest, it is of merit to know about the budget. What are the provisions for me? My son is studying, 3 years later he is going to be in the job market. So what are your budgetary plans? Are you going to create jobs or not? I'm going to retire next year, my finances will reduce. Whether the inflation is going to reduce or not, what will happen to the prices? I'm growing older, I will need more of medical attendance. Are more hospitals available in the city for senior citizens or not? I cannot travel, I cannot drive my car. Is there more of public transport or not? It concerns. Therefore, I must know about the budget. So this is why. And why is about the rational. I should not be forced to know about the budget. I should be interested to know about the budget. And it has always been my endeavor when I talk to the students. Don't feel forced to know just because you have a paper on public finance or government finance and you have to write some 3 hours examination. Therefore, you should know about the budget. No, big no. Don't better know about the budget. Just know it, even if you are not doing any exams, even if you are not doing any other things, because it will affect you, it will impact you. So therefore, why? Please go to the next slide. Yeah. When we want to know, when we want to learn, it is still not about how. When we want to learn about the budget, when we are talking about the budget and why should I know it? Why should I know it is also given in certain forms. Any budget will have 3 sides. Please click next, next, next. Okay. These are the 3 verticals the budget will have. These are the 3 sides of the budget. Next, next. Yeah. R stands for revenue, and I have simplified the first budget because that was the simplest with which we started, and that gave us a format, and we are almost adhering to the similar format. So first, independent India budget, which was presented by the person, Shanmugam Chetty, RK, as back as 26th November, an interim budget kind of a thing. The revenue is one. Next, please. Expenditure is the next, of course. Now you can guess expenditure. Next. Yeah, please complete the click. This is about the expenditure, and the last one is about the deficit. You see, this is what forms, and this is what we have to understand, and this is why we have to understand. How? Total revenues of the government. Why should I understand what is the total revenue of the government? The examples are very elementary of the first budget. So today's, I will show you the figures for today's time also. Why should I know what are the revenues to the government? Because if the government is short of revenue, what is likely to happen? Either they will tax me more, they will ask for more taxes. And if they're not asking for taxes, they will raise money from the market. When they raise money from the market, what do I call it? I will call it public debt because it is debt raised by the government in the name of the public or in the name of the people. No prime minister, no finance minister is going to pay back the loan they have raised for the country from their pensions or from their savings. No. So who is going to pay it? Not me, because I will not remain. The loans are for 50 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever. My next generation will pay. So either I am paying or the posterity, there is a next generation that is paying. In any case, the debt has to be paid. Or if there are taxes, they are taking from my own salary or something, and that taxes, when the taxes are hiked, it reduces my purchasing power because less money is available with me. So I eat less, I drive less, I wear less, and everything is minimized. So therefore, revenue is important to the government. I must know whether the revenue is sufficient or not, and accordingly, I should contribute to the extent possible. Expenditure. If the government makes so much of unproductive expenditure, like there have been criticisms that certain governments are spending too much on their promotions and advertising and highlighting what they have done in 100 days, 200 days, 500 days, that is all public money. If the government is spending money like that, or the government is spending money on some kind of goods which are not required by the masses of the country, so again, I must know what the government is expending, how the government is expending the money. And besides these two, the deficits. If the government doesn't have sufficient money, then the quality of life of people is going to be impacted. Government can't spend money on education, no good schools, no universities, no ITs, no IIMs, and some of the neighboring countries you have examples. They don't have any of these knowledge temples kind institutions or research centers. So, if there is a big deficit in the government, then what the government will do, like you and me, if we have bare minimum money, what do? We eat and survive. That's all. So certain countries which don't have enough resources, they just eat and survive, they don't do any developmental activity, and still there is a gap. And all of you as enlightened scholars must have heard about the Greece crisis, the Schengen country. The Greece crisis was what? The government spent lavishly. At the end of the day, they didn't even have money to pay to the pensioners. Some almost 10 years back from today's date, US has reached its brim in terms of borrowing, so it was not further permitted to borrow, and it had no money to give as salaries and pensions. Huge deficits. How the government is going to manage these deficits? So if I am an enlightened citizen, and why would I say I am an enlightened citizen? Because I am exercising my franchise. I am casting my vote. So if I am casting my vote, I have every reason to know the person who I have sent as representative, what the person is doing with my money, how the government is spending money, and what are the deficits. So this is a part of why should I know about the budget. Now please go to the next slide. Next. Yeah, please next. Next again. Yeah. Please do this clicking completely so that I can explain to the students. Yeah, click it to the last. I'll decide my sequence. Okay. In this slide, you see a name on the top, that is Dr. Vimal Jalan, the former RBI governor. He's been director at the School of Economics also earlier. How the budget is prepared? What is the dynamics? What is the mechanics of it? So in the first place, I have animated it, but because there is a lag, I think because of the internet strength, I want the complete thing to be in place. First, the estimates are created, estimates of the receipts and estimates of the expenses. This is the first step in the government while you are making the budget. And what time around the year it is done? Normally August or September. Three things are done. The earlier budget is revised, new budget is prepared. Two things are done. So estimates of receipts, like what is the money that the government will have, and then the estimates of expenses. Now, when we say estimates of receipts, I must tell all of us here that these receipts can be the revenue receipts, that is the normal receipts that come from taxes, or it can be capital receipts like the borrowings by the government. So government will know how much the tax receipts is going to be there, and if there is a gap, how much we are going to borrow. And this estimate across the board is done by all ministries and departments. There are around 53 ministries, 58 ministries and 93 departments. Any questions? Somebody, I can hear some disturbance. Okay, so all these ministries and departments want some money, and they make it through their DDGs. What are DDGs? This is a technical term, detailed demand for grants. They ask the government of India to give them grants to meet out their developmental and running expenses, and they prepare their estimates. So when all the estimates are prepared, these departments and ministries, that comes to the Ministry of Finance, and then finally the receipts estimates are there. Then expenses. How much is going to be the expense of the government? Certain expenses are met by the ministries, different ministries. Certain expenses are other expenses, like they can come from the contingent sources, they can come from the public accounts. So those expenses all together, how much expense it is going to be? So these estimates, these are their estimates prepared around the time August or September. The second stage comes, then what is the gap between these two? The receipts and the expenditure. The gap between these two is the only thing that is to call deficits. Deficits means gap, which is not fulfilled. Now, when the government looks through the gap, then the discussions follow. And who all participate in the discussions, just for information of the younger generation. The financial advisors may participate of the Government of India in the discussion. Secretaries to the Government of India will also participate in the discussion, and important officials from the Finance Ministry will also participate in the discussions. Now, what these discussions would be around? These discussions would be around the third point. Can we make certain efforts either to increase the receipts, or we have to make the efforts to reduce the expenses? So if the reduction in expenses is required, then all those ministries and departments will be asked to cut down on their expenses. Like, for example, I would just wish to share with all of us here that Government of India has various promotional programs falling under the Sustainable Development Goal 4 in the area of education. And government has various schemes for the hill areas, for the plain areas, for the northeastern areas, and for the special category states also. Then the government has to give money to every state, every district, every such body which is implementing the scheme. When the money is less, then the government doesn't exercise. They short their schemes. Short their schemes in the sense that if there are 5 schemes running, maybe only 3 schemes will run for the particular year. So they will reduce the expenses. That is how the whole thing will go. Or in certain heads, the money will not be given for this particular financial year. Or there is a ban on filling up the vacancies in different departments and ministries for a particular financial year. So this is how the expenses will be brought down. Alternatively, if you have to increase the receipts, then what are you going? Is there a space that you can borrow more? Is there a space you can recall loans? The Government of India might have given small loans, big loans to the neighboring countries also, like Government of Nepal, Government of Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc., etc. So can we recall? Or are there other measures? Last measure. That's a very minuscule measure, but that's a measure. Can the government sell some of its assets? And that is where you might have heard about a term that is called disinvestment. The government is selling off its public sector enterprises, and it all started with modern bridge long time back in 90s, then Pavan helicopters, the Balco, then many more. So government is taking out their money from those public sector enterprises which either have become not so functional or not dysfunctional, but not so functional, or where there is no relevance for the government to be in. Like modern bread, it was manufacturing bread. So why should the government be into manufacturing bread? Pavan. So when you have all kind of institutions, hall, etc., in the country, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, let them do the job. Why should the government be too much into it? So there are reasons, but this is another way. Or the government can sell off land. In some countries, the government sells off lands also. So therefore, government can increase their receipts by any of these measures, or government can reduce the expenses by any of the measures possible. With all this, the budget is finalized. So that is the later right-hand side part. And once it is finalized, it is presented in the parliament. Here is something very important. As per the Constitution of India, and it is interesting equally, as per the Constitution of India, money cannot be spent unless the budget is cleared by the parliament. So it is placed in the parliament on the table. The finance minister reads it out shortly in February. Sometimes again you will have the budget will be read out. After the budget is read out, it is deemed to have been generally cleared by the parliament. Parliament doesn't withhold clearing the budget. But do you think really and sincerely that a 3-hour presentation can decide the fate of the country in terms of allocation of finances? To any common person's mind, the answer is no. There is so much of uproar in the parliament. People are either thumping desks or they are raising slogans. Amid that, then, how can the budget make any sense to its audience or to the policymakers? So no, it's a ritual. Afterwards, what happens? The budget is deemed to have been cleared, but afterwards, what happens? There are standing committees of parliament. They peruse the budget in full scrutiny as to the detailed demand of grants, whether it is justified, less justified, more justified, should more money be given, should less money be given, etc., etc., etc. So once the budget is cleared from those standing committees, then the budget is effectively and properly deemed to have been cleared, and then on the allocations are there. So here you see, when you say how it goes about, you estimate the size of expense, the size of receipts. Now, receipts has one thing. It is not very elastic. You can't raise more money always. Because if you hike the taxes, people are either going to evade it or avoid it. They are not willing to pay taxes more, irrespective of whatever are the charges. In UK, the taxes may be higher, people are paying. In India, it may be lower, people are paying. But if you hike the taxes in UK or in India, given the current rate and slabs, people feel very uncomfortable. So this becomes a little inelastic. On the expenditure side, it is ever expanding. It is ever expanding for various reasons. There is a hypothesis also, what you call peacock hypothesis. It goes up and up and up in its spurts. Like in 90s, you did your Pokhran. So when you did your Pokhran, suddenly the expenses went up. UPA government came, the flagship scheme, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan or NRSM or some such scheme. So, is there any message? Hello? Okay, I continue. So, because I can hear some voices coming from. Okay, yeah, just trying to stabilize the chaos that came. So finally, this is how we see the budgets are present, the budgets are prepared. Now from here, I go to the other slide, unless there are very specific questions, somebody would want to ask a question. I was wanting to tell on this slide that receipts and expenditures, they are two various, very strange phenomena. Deficit, if you look, it has always been expanding. We have an act in the parliament, that is what we call Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, where we claim that the deficit should not increase a particular limit of the GDP, that is the gross domestic product. Given that act, the government became very constrained, so it kept on amending the rules and the act itself. The latest was amended in as later as 2018, whereas the FRBM Act came in the year 2004. So we keep on amending, but then these acts tell us a specific limit up to which we can maintain the deficit. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. You know, when in the previous slide, I have tried to tell you in very simple form how the budget is done. This is how exactly on the internet, if you log in, Union Budget Government of India 2023-24, it will look like this. And here, if you see point number 8, it is about the total receipts. If you see point number 9, it is about total expenses. And from 15 to 18, you have various deficits like revenue deficit, like effective revenue deficit, like fiscal deficit, like primary deficit. This is how the budget is. And this is in the public domain. So if you want to see and get onto the figures, you can always see it. This is the latest. I've just taken a screenshot for you. This is 2023 and 24 budget. Next slide, please. Yeah, just do the clicking part, complete the whole of it. One more click. Yeah. You see, yeah, that's fine, please. This is the simplified form of what you have seen in the list. This is what I have created out of that Government of India budget thing. Beginning from the left to the right, there are 4 columns you can see. 21, 22, 22, 23, 22, 23 revised, and 23, 24. It shows what? There are actual figures which have a lag 2 years back. What does it mean to you? That when the government spends any money in a particular year, how much actually has been spent, the government gets to know after 2 years. Why? Because there is an organization in the Government of India, you call it Comptroller or Auditor General of India. They do the reporting, they do the reports like whether the money has been spent right or wrong, not so right. Then CGA, Controller General of Accounts, will do the accounting part of it. Every money has to be accounted for. They are the accountants for the Government of India. So it takes the time. It takes a good amount of time. So you have the actual figures available to you as back as 2021-22. So the figures that you see, these are in rupees. The figures that you see, these are the figures here. Then you have budget is 22-20. Now what you see here, you okay, so this is the figure and this is how you saw it. Then you have the expenditure part. On the expenditure part, again you see the 2 columns different. Then again you have the right words 2 columns. It is a bit technical, so I'm not spending technicalities. Some may not be. But let me tell you on one thing. When you look to the total receipts and in the total receipts column, we see
Sir?
हेलो, क्या है ये? हेलो, हेलो, इज इट डिस्कनेक्टेड? Okay, to tell all of us that when we talk about the receipts and the receipts and the expenditure would only equal then borrowing done. So amount that is 1,7 borrowing rupees crores, of course. Then this gap leads us to variety of deficits like revenue, like fiscal. However, I have tried to explain to you what is each deficit. Which means tax and non-tax, not a capital account, borrowing means tax and non-tax. The revenue account plus also added the interest and interest. So this is the revenue deficit. The second one is fiscal deficit, where again you have total receipts minus total revenue receipts. Recovery of loans other than borrowing. So this is your primary deficit. So this is the simplified budget of the whole one-page document. When you shorten it for a common man's purpose, then it becomes like this. And these given here, the size of this, we can easily maintain that deficit, but that is not so. What you the budget and what we do, what you see in the budget and what that these two things are very different things. Because when you talk about the GDP, it is the most wider macro concept where tangibles, non-tangibles, everything is taken good care. So how do we clear this puzzle? Like we are such a rich country that politicians say we are number 5, our forest reserve of the copper, etc. But still there is a budget deficit. He often financial sector. So when we talk about the financial economy, we are not talking about the entire financial sector. So when we talk about the budget, it is a very, very small thing as compared reconnect and rejoin every time it is disconnected. But it might be giving some interruption to the audience also because they are not knowing for what reason the slide is going off. Anyways, I have come back to my audience. that we were talking about the size of the. Somebody might think that let us all our senses, and we are not is as often as possible giving me a bad time here because the connection is too unstable. Uh, and shortly, in that case, I would like to conclude what I was trying to tell you, that reducing the expenses to the extent possible, that raised receipts on expenditure was made by countries and it came to. Should not be surprised for learners and researchers. Though we had started the background work as back as 1998, we did it only after the Montreal Pact, and we borrowed certain nomenclature from the European nations, that why 3% deficit is tolerable, because in the Montreal Pact it is given 3%. So there are many things which we have taken. So similarly, we have taken the budgetary reforms also, and fitting into the spirit of the New Zealand kind of reform, what we decided that we will have a zero revenue deficit. So our policy statement says that we should have a zero revenue deficit. However, on the fiscal deficit, we keep on changing our stand. The money that we raise from the people is the money we And number two, for all developing countries, as a matter of policy, a moderate inflation and a deficit budget is required. Because as long as there is a budgetary deficit, the financial markets become very vibrant. Their width and depth both go very well. So yes, we as a matter of policy also want a deficit budget, and we have a deficit budget. But what should be the extent of that deficit is all defined in the Fiscal Responsibilities and Budget Management Act. That is there. So with this slide, I wanted to cover up certain points for you. Can we go to the next slide? Please. Next slide. I think with this slide, I will call it a day because the frequency with which this is getting off and on may not be of any use to the audience, and even I will feel bad about it. Look, in this slide, what I tried to give you the 23-24, a complete estimate of the major ministries, what money they got. So now look to, it is in rupees crores. If you the that is
8%. That's the percentage.
so participants, I finally regret for your inconvenience, and I don't think there is any point continuing any further because it's too often getting off and on. So I would like, in case if you have any queries, my email ID is available of answering your queries. This was the slide which I wanted to present to you because transport is one of the very important things in any country to be undertaken, and therefore you will find rural transport is one. Slides are not changing now. Or if the slides can change, please go to the next slide. Okay, let it be. From now. So thank you all for listening patiently and with you.